Where is Aaron right now?
Aaron here, as always. Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we have yet another very damaging piece of information relating to the Scientology Danny Masterson criminal trial set to start on October 11th. In this particular case, this information is possibly much more damaging for Scientology itself actually than it is for Danny Masterson. And a very quick recap for new viewers. Danny Masterson is a well-known Scientologist and actor. He was in that 70s show, and he's been accused by a number of Scientologist women. He's been accused of attacks on these women. I'm using this language instead of the real word because YouTube will suppress and demonetize the video. Because these women were Scientologists and because Danny Masterson is a Scientologist, there is a strict prohibition in Scientology of ever reporting another member to the police or any civil or criminal authorities of any kind whatsoever for anything whatsoever. That is the core reason why it took so long for the authorities to become aware of these allegations. And even once the authorities did become aware, it took years for the district attorney to actually decide to bring a case in this matter. So that is how we got to where we are today, which is just a few weeks away from October 11th, finally, the start of Danny Masterson's criminal trial for the attacks on these women. Yesterday, we learned that Judge Almeida has ordered Danny Masterson and his team to turn over a copy of a secret settlement agreement and non-disclosure agreement that Scientology made one of Danny Masterson's victims sign in 2004 after she came forward to the Scientology authorities about what Danny had done to her. The fact that such a settlement agreement and NDA even exists in the first place is pretty damning to Danny Masterson in this case. And yet another thing that has been revealed that looks like it may be even more damning, except for Scientology, is that it looks as if Scientology itself paid for the legal costs associated with hammering out this agreement. Last week, Judge Almeida held a hearing where Danny's team was arguing why they should not have to turn over a copy of this secret agreement. And the prosecution, in making its arguments for why Danny's team should have to turn over this document, included in its arguments quotes from testimony that one of Danny's civil attorneys gave to an investigative grand jury that was looking into Danny Masterson and these alleged crimes back in January of 2020. That secret agreement that this whole hearing was about, the one between Danny Masterson and one of his victims, the attorney representing Danny Masterson in that whole process was the legendary Hollywood entertainment lawyer, Marty Singer. While Marty was testifying in front of this grand jury, he said the following, and I'm quoting now from the Underground Bunker blog. It says, Marty Singer also made a huge admission in his grand jury appearance that Mueller happened to include in one of his pleadings. That's Deputy District Attorney Reinhold Mueller. Mr. Singer testified that he has represented other clients who are members of the Church of Scientology, and on some occasions, they've agreed to pay the legal fees for those clients on particular matters. That is, the Church of Scientology on some occasions has agreed to pay the legal fees for those clients on particular matters. But stated he is not aware if they paid for Masterson's legal fees in the mediation matter. Now it goes on to say here, there it is in black and white, the Church of Scientology has used tax-free money to pay the legal fees of some of their celebrities who are represented by Marty Singer. Now when I read the quote here from Marty in what he said to the grand jury, I don't automatically assume that the quote is referring to celebrity Scientologists. When I read it, I immediately think, well, maybe there were some Sea Org members, some Scientology staff members who for some reason Scientology hired Marty Singer to represent, and then of course the Church of Scientology would be footing the legal bill for that. So what I did is I called Mike Rinder and I asked him. Now viewers of this channel will know Mike Rinder as the co-host of the Scientology and the Aftermath show with Leah Remini. Mike Rinder is also on the board of the Aftermath Foundation with me. He's one of the most high-level defectors to ever leave Scientology's international management ranks and blow the whistle on Scientology. And during his time working for Scientology, he was also one of the people responsible, one of the main people responsible for hiring attorneys for Scientology, and nobody would know the answer to this question better than Mike Rinder. And by the way, Mike has a book coming out on September 27th called A Billion Years. I highly recommend it. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. So I called Mike and I said, Mike, there's this quote from Marty Singer that he gave to the grand jury. How do you interpret that? Could that mean that Scientology hired Marty to represent some Sea Org members, and of course Scientology would foot the bill for that? And he said, no, they would never hire Marty Singer to represent a Sea Org member. And I said, well, do you have any personal knowledge of Scientology having paid the legal bills of public celebrity Scientologists? And he said 100% yes. And the example that he gave me was back in 1993, attorney Graham Barry pulled off a bit of a coup and infiltrated the holiday gala held at the Celebrity Center, the Scientology Celebrity Center in Hollywood. And he and a handful of people infiltrated this party. And at the end of the party, there was also like a performance by a bunch of celebrities, including like John Travolta and Juliette Lewis and Isaac Hayes. And at the end of this holiday performance, Graham and his cohorts there jumped on stage and served a whole bunch of Scientology celebrities in some ongoing litigation that was happening at that time. And Mike said that Scientology hired attorneys to represent each of the celebrities and paid for all of those legal bills. And I said, Mike, I think there's sort of an implication being made that perhaps Scientology is paying for Danny Masterson's criminal defense attorneys. Do you think there's what's the likelihood of something like that happening? And he said, no, probably not. And he said, but these other Scientologists who are being drawn into the case and having to testify, it is totally possible that Scientology is paying for those legal bills, but that's just pure speculation. And I said, you know, in the grand jury, Marty was testifying not about any of this criminal defense attorney stuff. He was testifying about having represented Danny in this secret 2004 settlement between Danny and one of his victims. And he was asked whether Scientology paid his legal bills for having represented Danny in that matter, and Marty said he could not recall. And Mike's opinion in this matter was that Marty Singer saying he could not recall or was not aware whether Scientology paid the legal bills is pretty much the exact same thing as Marty admitting that they did, but not wanting to say so. Now, this is why this is such a big deal. And it has to do with the various different ways that Danny Masterson's defense could go in trying to get him off of the hook of these charges that he's facing. You have two competing interests here. You have Danny's interest in not going to prison for the rest of his life, and you have Scientology's interest in not being dragged into the case to whatever extent they can help it, and also not being prosecuted for obstructing justice. As of now, Scientology itself is not facing any charges relating to this Danny Masterson criminal matter, but they very well could because of all of the various ways they have obstructed justice in this case. Even though they have not been brought up on charges yet, they still could be, and could be even after the Danny Masterson case is over. The more evidence the prosecution has that Scientology has obstructed justice, the more likely Scientology is to try and strike some kind of a deal with the prosecution that we will give you what you need to win the Masterson case if you promise not to prosecute us for obstruction. And on the other hand, Danny Masterson's, possibly one of his best bets to beat these charges, is to paint himself as a victim of having grown up in the Scientology cult. He could try to pull some shenanigans like he didn't know that it was wrong, or he was told he hadn't really done anything wrong, that the victim was completely to blame. In some respects, we're looking at a possible game of chicken here, where Danny can try to throw Scientology under the bus to save his butt, and Scientology could throw Danny under the bus to save their butts. And the chances of Scientology throwing Danny under the bus go up the more evidence the prosecution has of Scientology's obstruction of justice in this matter. And the fact that Scientology itself may have paid for all of the attorney's fees associated with hammering out this secret agreement that caused one of Danny's victims to believe that she was actually not allowed to go to the authorities, this would be horrible for Scientology. And the more horrible it is for Scientology, the more horrible it is for Danny, because like I said, the more likely it is that Scientology will have to throw Danny under the bus to save their own butts. So that's why this really is a particularly big deal. And it will be very interesting to see how far or how deeply the prosecution tries to dig into this matter during the trial. Like if Marty Singer gets called to testify, and to be honest, I'm not sure if he is actually on the witness list, but how can a lawyer really get away with saying he's not aware of who's paying his legal fees? Even if he forgot, you can always go back and find out who paid the legal fees. And for you Scientologists who I know watch this channel secretly, what exactly do you think about Scientology using the money donated by you and people like you, people who go into debt, who take out credit card debt, who refinance their homes, who cash in retirement plans, to donate money to Scientology because Scientology tells you how much it needs your money to grow. And then they turn around and they spend that money on attorney's fees for a celebrity who got himself into a whole mess of trouble. This is how Scientology is putting your money to work. I know if I found that out while I was still a Scientologist, I would have been absolutely outraged. So that is the update on the Masterson case today. We are undoubtedly going to hear more about this case over the next week. And remember, there are at least 3 civil suits and at least 2 criminal actions, 2 criminal cases ongoing regarding Scientology or prominent Scientologists. Every time there is a development in one of these cases, I will share that information with you. Stay tuned to this channel for that. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.